Hey everyone, thanks for joining. This is the 2026 kickoff for Garden Chat, and I am super excited today to be here with two phenomenal organizers based in Louisville, Kentucky. This is a special Garden Chat where we are talking to two Black women leaders who are really trying to create change, grassroots change from the bottom up in Kentucky. So I'm super excited to have here today Celine Mutuye Maria and Tala Talisha Wilson. So welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you
Yes,
for
thank
having
you
us.
for having us.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So Celine is a community organizer fighting to build a world that supports and accommodates all people. Her family moved to the U.S. through a refugee resettlement program following the 1994 Rwanda genocide, and she was raised in South Louisville, South Side. And she is organizing to build power for the people in order to develop communities of care that support safety, dignity, and belonging. And Tala, who I've known for quite some time, is the Black and queer community organizer dedicated to the fight alongside the people for the freedom and liberation of all Black people. She is from West End, Louisville, and she uses her platform to exemplify the magic and power that lives within Black people in Louisville and Black people in Kentucky and all this around this world in diaspora. She wants to build a world where Black people are empowered by and equipped with the tools, skills, political understanding, and joy that they need to build an alternative to what we're currently up against. And what we're currently up against is crazy. It got real in the field, right? And so both of you are organizers with BLAC. This stands for Black Leadership Action Coalition of Kentucky. There's BLAC, but then there's also Black AF, which is the Action Fund. We all know what AF stands for, my bad. So yeah, so I'm super excited to chat with you all today because we're gonna keep with the consistent three question routine, but get into a little bit about y'all's perspective on organizing. So I will jump right in. Whoever wants to go first, what have been major influences, whether they are personal or professional, or if it's either something that you've learned or an idea that you have encountered that has really shaped you into the person you are today? So whoever wants to go first.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't mind to kick us off. So I always talk about the fact that I'm from Rwanda because, the genocide in 94 really shapes so much of what my life is today. My parents never had any intention on leaving the country. And I often think about, like, if that moment had not happened, what would my life look like? I would have been able to grow up with my cousins. I would have been able to speak my native language fluently. And, life would just be a lot different. So the genocide really shapes so much of how I think about the world today because I didn't quite understand the root of it when I was younger. But as I got older, learned more about the history, I saw that, me being displaced from my home was the result of colonization and white supremacy and capitalism. We were colonized by the Belgians second, the Germans first, and the things that they did to our people, they used the divide and conquer strategy to ultimately result in what we saw in 1994. And so I think about that a lot when I'm thinking about, like, the type of world that I want to live in. I want to live in a world similar to what my experience was in South Louisville, in a community where I had a community center, Americana Community Center, that I went to growing up. I had my first job there, my first kiss there. So many life experiences. I lived in a community with a bunch of other immigrants and refugees from different places. And so, I know where I come from and the experience of losing access to land and home, and belonging. And I also know that it's possible to find that in a new place, but I want to build a world where people don't have to be forced out of anywhere and that they can find belonging and connection no matter where they may live. So, yeah, I definitely often would say that the genocide shapes so much of who I am and how I think about the world.
Yeah, thanks. Before Tala jumps in on that question, thank you for sharing that experience. And I think also, especially because we're talking about organizing, which gives it political power, thinking about the 1994 Rwanda genocide, where either it was 75% of the country that was either displaced or killed. And Bill Clinton was the president of the United States at the time, and he blocked intervention, blocked any intervention. And we could talk a little bit too at some point about military intervention, what that would look like. But the U.S. blocked any intervention at that time. And so thank you for sharing your experience.
Thank you.
Liz, can you ask that question again?
Sure. So, what have been major influences or a major influence, whether it's personal, professional, an idea that you learned that really helped shape you into the person you are today?
Yeah, so a few things really. For one, my family. And so I grew up in a family where we made things happen, but we were always robbing Peter to pay Paul, you know? And so I also grew up in a family where my folks were dealing with mental health issues that were going unaddressed, addiction, chaos, you know what I mean? Living in a neighborhood, living in West End, Louisville, where the police were highly surveilling us, right? But still we had joy, still we had community, still we had each other, still we leaned on each other. So that very much shapes the type of organizer who I am right now. And then I think there was a moment in high school where that also shaped the organizer that I am. And this really ties back to family of why I've always been encouraged and like kind of pushed to speak up for myself, but also speak up for any wrong that is going on. And so in high school, when I had that experience where I felt like a teacher who was very vital to me, my Black history teacher, which I had never taken a Black history class before. I was in my sophomore year of high school, and I had just learned about so many people other than who I had been learning about up until that time. That was the first time that I was really introduced to the diaspora, which was crazy to me once I learned this. And so this teacher who was very vital to me, who was very vital to us at Central, this Black historical school, and he is being threatened with being suspended. He is being threatened um with being suspended. And he was dealing with a lot of backlash from the white teachers who were there. And that's something that really empowered me to like speak up and really shape the type of organizer that I am. The last place that is kind of like back is in college. I was a part of the Inclusion and Equity program, the Inclusion and Equity internship program at U of L with Marion Vassar. And it was really a great opportunity for me to learn how to navigate these really uncomfortable conversations that people don't like to be in. So that was really the catalyst for me to be able to hold tensions with people. I had already been doing that, but I had learned a skill at that point of how to really help people navigate this weirdness, this uncomfortableness of talking about racism, talking about sexism, talking about intersectionality, talking about queerness. I know this is hard. I know this is complicated, but it has to get done because when it doesn't, this is what is at risk. This is the cost of that. And I think that shaped the type of organizer I am right now as well.
Thank you. Thank you. And I will say that when you talk about home, family, joy, you definitely bring that in every space, even in spaces where difficult conversations are about to be had. You still have like a beautiful spirit and energy about you. And I can also relate to Black history and learning about Black people, the diversity of Black people globally. The fact that a lot of times we think we're minorities in the US, but we're not minorities globally, right? Uh, by any stretch of the imagination. So now I want to talk about y'all's work with Black and Black AF. Because as I mentioned at the beginning, Black stands for Black Leadership Action Coalition of Kentucky. And it's an inclusive network of Black organizers and activists across Kentucky. And you all have a very clear, they call it radical, I suppose, but I mean, I guess people could think of it as radical, but abolitionist, anti-capitalist, and believe in representative and collective decision making. Black organizers to transform and realign current systems of power to meet the needs of all people through the belief that we can work together to build just, equitable and inclusive socioeconomic systems, by building relationships with one another, growing in our leadership and expanding our base, right? And I would say all of that is really about building community to build power in an inclusive, democratic way.
Yes.
And so, first, before I ask you about like your individual roles and individual work, let's kind of talk about what it means to be an organizer. So, how do you define an organizer and what traits do they need?
Hmm. I don't mind taking that first. So first of all, I am an organizer and I love organizing and I truly believe in organizations. I do believe in order and I do believe in, flexibility in that. Even my home is in order, but it's chaotic and beautiful in the ways in which I need it to fit me. Um, so I think that for one, we would have never, there's no place where we would have ever been taught how to be an organizer in any school system, right? There was never a time where they would have taught us how to be the Martins, how to be the Malcolms, how to be the Roses, how to be the Angela Davis, what I'm saying, Ida B. Wells. They would have never taught us how to be those people because they knew that teaching us how to be those people and not just what they did would mean that we would fight for ourselves in radical ways like they did or that they do that they continue to. And so for me, or an organizer there's a million and one definitions and there's no one way, there's no best way. It just depends on where you are, who you are, and what space you're in and what's important to you. The type of organizer that I am is I believe in bringing people into this work and doing this work alongside them. I believe in giving people the tools and access to things that I have or that I know is very important to be an organizer. I believe in showing up for myself before I have the capacity to show up for others. That's one of the things. Organizing takes a great deal of responsibility. When everything is going right, congratulations. When everything is going wrong, you are the reason, right? And so you have to be willing to be responsible for some of the things that you're not necessarily responsible for, but you are in position. I think that an organizer is someone who is able to listen to people and be able to direct them and delegate them and put them in positions where they can grow and be stronger for their community. I think that an organizer is someone who provides opportunities for that person to develop and be strong in what they do. And an organizer is someone who creates a pathway for you to be moved out of that space so that more and other people can continue to cycle into position, into roles, and doing the things. And I think an organizer has a base. You have the ability in some type of capacity to bring people out, bring people in, get people to do, get people to move. You have the ability to mobilize people. And I think mobilizer and organizer is very different, but they do need to work alongside one another. But I think an organizer needs to have the skill to mobilize someone or mobilize a group of people. Those are just the immediate things, but I'm sure I got a million and one other things too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and honestly, I will just really echo what Tala has said. I think what sticks out the most to me is like that collectivism piece. I think a lot of us, when we are taught about the little bit of Black history we're taught about, it's this individual did this thing, and then they don't talk about all other people that were behind them and with them and beside them and in front of them, and the strategies that it took to develop plans, where Claudette Colvin is the person that, was impacted in a way, but then there were decisions made for many, many reasons, and, all of the nitty gritty pieces that happened. And so I think an organizer is someone who believes in collectivism, who can understand their role as an individual. Like maybe you start out as an activist, as many of us do, and then now you are in a place where you're thinking about your role within a larger ecosystem, and you're not trying to just be that lone wolf. That's something we talk about a lot. And something that like capitalism and individualism in this country really promotes and really like congratulates people on. And so we adopt and internalize those things and we use them to measure ourselves by. And that often leads to folks burning out of activism and organizing because, something else I spoke to is like that martyrdom sometimes that is put on folks, like something that we have really challenged ourselves on as we're breaking out of that, like those lone wolf tendencies, is, I'm fighting for other people, I'm fighting for a better world, but I'm also fighting for me. Like, I am in this world too. I am affected by these systems in different ways and similar ways than other people are. And so it's like, if you don't see yourself in the fight, then after a certain point, first of all, I think you don't have a great assessment, right, of the things that are going on. And then it makes it hard for you to connect with people. And, Tyler also mentioned that connection piece, like relationship building. I think there is like this Saul Alinsky tradition of organizing that doesn't necessarily fit our culture and our communities and our ways of relating to each other, because it's hard. We talk about this all the time. Like, the first phone call I make to you, if my first question is like, can you come to this canvas? You don't know anything about me. You don't know what challenges I face. You don't know what my dreams and my needs and my vision is. And so, organizing takes so much more time than I think we talk about on the surface level, because relationship building takes time and trust building takes time. So you got to have those skills of like active listening, of being able to like understand people, and also not trying to intellectualize everything. I feel like sometimes I have to check myself, like, girl, okay, sure, you understand these things, and I feel really empowered by that, but I got to talk to folks and meet people where they are, right? And so what does that look like, and how does that influence the conversations you have? But yeah, I think everything Tala has said really aligns with just like the things that we have learned in this journey together in our development as leaders and organizers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tala.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I love that you speak on the like building with other people. I think that is one of the things that is very important in an organizer. Like, you do have to have boundaries, but you also have to be committed to the longevity of this work. That means you are working with people who you don't necessarily agree with. That means that sometimes I do have to talk to the problematic uncles. You know what I'm saying? I do have to talk to the person who doesn't get it and is a little toxic masculinity is showing up, and it doesn't mean that I'm going to hold the responsibility of that. That doesn't come without firmness. That doesn't come without boundaries, and that doesn't come without directness and accountability. But what I am saying is that as I develop in my organizing, I realize how important it is to not counsel people out. You know what I'm saying? For me to, be able to hold the tension before I just be like, I'm done with you, or I'm counseling you, or you're out of here, right? I do think it does get to a point where we decide that this person is not ready to be in community with people and will be a danger in community with people. But for the most part, that is an exception. But for the most part, we really, when you are an organizer, especially when you are an organizer for the liberation of Black people, you have to be committed in a very scary way. This is not, and I think that sometimes people, there's this beauty. Since 2020, there's this glamour that has came behind the title of organizer without understanding the strength in the capacity that it demands of you, the exhaustion that comes as a result of it, the thing that, you are responsible to until the end of time. That is not talked about enough. Depths of what you have to actually hold when you hold that title, in a way of thinking of yourself as a Panther or as a SNCC member, you know what I mean? And so I say that to say that when you are an organizer for the liberation and freedom of Black people, you have to be committed to them in a way that is scary, that is sometimes annoying, that is very much inconvenient, that is exhausting. And yes, it is hard, but I'm telling you, at the other side is something very beautiful and something very much worthwhile, even if we don't get to experience in our lifetime.
Mhm. Yeah, so I really appreciate you saying that. A couple things. Selena, I'm so glad you mentioned Saul Alinsky, because was contemplating that, right? And it's the idea that as an organizer, you have to cater to people's self-interest. Like, you have to think about their individual interests to bring them into the fold. And so I really appreciated you saying, this is, to a degree, this capitalist individualist framework. And when both of you are talking about listening and being accountable and being in community, but also this aspect of burnout that organizers experience, it really makes me think about, especially after 2020, when it was so intense, especially in Louisville, when people are fighting for justice for Breonna Taylor in the streets almost every day, the trauma that came from that. And like, it makes me think about organizing also necessitates that we are well and that our community can be well. Because how do we have these difficult conversations? How do we hold each other accountable if we don't have good interpersonal relationships? And let's be honest, sometimes people are not well. We don't like lack of mental health care in the community is a real thing. How many of us have been taught to communicate in ways, right, that are healthy, productive, where we can hold tensions, like Tyler keeps saying. So I appreciate everything you all are saying. So taking all of that into consideration, how would you define success as an organizer? Celine, we can start with you. So how do you all view success? How do you define success as an organizer?
Ooh, yeah, your reflections really resonated. But also, I think that so I think Tala and I connect a lot because we both came from some ineffective at best and toxic at worst organizing spaces. And we have both committed to each other and to our organization, to our base, that we don't want to replicate those types of systems. And even in that, right? Like now we've trained ourselves, we've built skills, we feel, very effective. I feel really good about the work that we're doing and where we're headed. And in the trainings and stuff that I've been through, like oftentimes going back to that Saul Alinsky tradition, it's winning the campaign, right? It's winning, building the power, it's doing the thing. And I very much believe that we absolutely must run effective issue campaigns, electoral campaigns. We have to build power. We have to contend with power, because whether or not we engage with these systems, they will be there and they will impact our lives. But I'm starting to like reframe how I think about winning, and even like my relationship to like time when it comes to organizing. Because for me, winning is actually now looking more like building powerful communities, connected communities that are able to weather conflicts, that are able to weather these attacks, from the systems that we're all embedded in a part of, and that can be there for each other and are committed to each other, right? Like we don't all have to be friends. I was just having a conversation where someone named Bree mentioned that, friendship is shared interest, community is shared commitment, right? Folks that are bound together by the fact that like we want to live in a healthy, beautiful, loving community. And so that is a win to me. And so like whenever we are having a campaign strategy meeting and we come up against conflict and we're able to face that conflict and navigate it and work through it and practice principle struggle, people aren't walking away from the table, because again, that's what this society tells us to do, is you run away from discomfort, you separate, they separate our communities, so many things. So I think recently I've started to redefine like what is really winning. The struggle though is in this nonprofit industrial complex. Funders don't, they don't fund that type of win. They fund the campaign stuff, the how big is your base, those types of things. So even though I'm redefining my wins, I'm trying to understand how do we sustain an organization that is focused on community building and really learning how to be with each other as humans. That is not the way that we were raised. How do we sustain that work? Because truly, that is the most important work. And that is the work that will help us win the campaigns.
Yeah, yeah.
hmm What is a success? As so, a success for me is people being together and being so happy. Like that is when I feel the most. Like we just recently had a space game, a space tournament, and it was so good. Like people were just kicked back. We had some wings, we had some wedges, banana pudding, we had some good drinks. And people were just sitting around the table, just like a kickback back in the day in the hood with the family. That is a win. Because the whole point of organizing for me is so that we can have this camaraderie at the end. My whole point in doing what I do on a regular basis is so that at the end of the day, I can kick back with my cousins and we can have a good time and we can laugh out our chairs while their kids play in the background, running around in the backyard. That's all I'm doing this for.
Hmm.
Maybe some land, and so it's like when I see that happening, I'm like, oh, this is what it feels like. Even though it's in smaller pockets, that feels like a win because we're not doing that enough. We're not having family reunions. We're not having block parties. We don't, you know what I'm saying, commune with each other in the same ways. Hell, even Derby doesn't look the same, you know? And even the holidays don't look the same in many people's families. We don't take family trips. We don't do family pictures no more. We ain't been to JC Penney to take a family photo in forever. And so it's like when we begin doing stuff like that, that feels like a success. That feels like a win. You know, when I start seeing people have their family shirts and they organize it in family groups on Facebook, and everybody trying to decide on the t-shirt outline, I'm like, this is good for me. We all right. The kids is gonna be, and so those are successes for me. And then other successes for me are those intimate conversations where we get really, really deep. Like when I'm feeling good on a spiritual level, when I feel something coming out of me spiritually, that feels like a win. Because I have been saying for a little bit like this malnutrition that Black people are experiencing spiritually, when I see spiritualness coming out of us, I'm like, oh, we there, honey. Let it come out of you, okay? Let it, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not religious at all, but when I see us letting out whatever is inside of us on a spiritual level, I'm like, man, we're going to be all right, honey. If we hold on to that, whether it's through song, whether it's through conversation, whether it's through, you know, yoga or any other type of somatic practice, or whether it's through just like having spaces where we can just talk about what things mean to us and symbolize for us, feels like a win.
Wow, wow. I'm loving this conversation because I appreciate this idea about winning the campaign because I'm thinking about this a lot of, in terms of like if it's anti-capitalist, if it's abolitionist, and what does that analysis look like within the context of campaign, and how does that shape how we define quote unquote winning? But also both of you seem to be really grounded in something I very much appreciated. One of Grace Lee Boggs' last books, The Next American Revolution, where she talked about we have to build strong community. That is the revolution. Community gardens to feed each other in food deserts. That's the revolution. Community owned daycare centers. Tyler, you talking about maybe a little bit of land. Yeah, land that we all control collectively, right? In ways that are an alternative to this capitalist system that is about individual wealth, profit, and power. I also appreciate hearing this third of joy. Like that's a win because it really is a win. So I appreciate you all creating spaces for people to experience joy, to come together, because that's critical for building community. And then I think it was Afeni in the Evolution of a Revolutionary that talked about that spiritual element of the movement, if I recall. It's been years since I read that. I may have to go back, but that too is important. I feel like that tapping into our ancestral power and knowledge and calling on their names. So I could talk to y'all all day. Just got a couple questions left for this chat. So, as organizers for Black, tell me about the project you are most excited about currently and why it's important to you. Um, because we know that midterm elections are on the horizon, fascism and authoritarianism, they're here, they've taken hold. At the time we're recording this conversation, we're at war, our neighbors are being kidnapped off the streets. So,
Okay.
um, in addition to talking about your project that's most important to you, talk about why it's important in this current moment, in particular as we're preparing for primaries and midterms and beyond.
Tala, do you want to talk about Work at Black, and maybe I'll talk about Black Action Fund, things that are exciting for us?
You can go whatever program for you.
Okay. Well, at Black, I would say, and this is work that Tala is leading, the care infrastructure work that we're doing is most exciting to me. We often talk about the fact that, at Black, we're trying to build community power, and at Black Action Front, we're trying to build political power. And so I'll let Tala speak on that piece, but I am like very energized by what we have planned for this year. In terms of building political power at Black Action Fund, we have since last year have started to convene a collective of Black people who have differences of opinions, who all care about community, right? These are folks that we've known for years, who we've worked with, we've been in various spaces with. And so we know ultimately at the core, we have that shared commitment to community. How folks go about it is very different, right? There's many different approaches to change. And sometimes because of those different approaches, people clash, right? Or maybe there was an incident that happened and people weren't seeing eye to eye. And then again, this systems has socialized us to separate when those things happen. So we called folks in to these to a convening last year, and then we had monthly meetings ever since to talk about, like, considering that we know that we have the common ground, the shared interest of our city being well. How do we go about doing that when it comes to building Black political power and or progressive power in general? And how do we build the skills to work through the moments that we know are inevitable, which is when we're going to disagree about certain things? How do we start to talk about, like, what are the issues that we are prioritizing for a Black policy agenda locally and statewide? And how does that speak to relationships we can build with elected officials and practicing or engaging in co-governance projects or collaborative governance projects, as Local Progress says? And then from there, how do we use that to support the work of building community power, right? To resource the work of building community power. And we leverage elections simply as an accountability thing. You've been rocking with community, you've been with us planning, building, shaping, then yes, you have the support of the constituents, the voters. And if not, then we are able to use that political power to say, no, we have someone else who can represent us and really, be there. And really, like, how do we start to practice direct democracies, right? Where it's not these individuals who are leaving. Because I mean, even elected officials will tell you that it's a lot of pressure and responsibility, and they feel isolation sometimes, especially movement folks who go in on the inside. Sometimes movement is like, all right, you got it, see you later. But we're really trying to change the culture and say that, getting folks from movement into office is step one. That is really when the work begins. And how do we get folks who are committed to, when I win, I will make space for co-governance? What we're seeing Zoran Mamdani do with building an office of co-governance in New York's local government. So that to me is what is most exciting on the political side.
Before Tala jumps in, I won direct democracy. One of my favorite pieces about the direct democracy is CLR James, every cook can govern. That's exactly his argument. He's like, set aside the fact that in ancient Greece that, not everybody was considered able to participate in the democracy. It still made more sense to have the assembly because literally every cook can govern. But could you say a couple words about the care work and what it entails that you're excited about? Because that's where you started. And I appreciate you talking about political power and the table because you define, like, what does the care work look like?
Yeah, we are this year experimenting with, like, we do canvassing and phone banking and text banking, all the traditional organizing tactics. But we've embedded now in our programming, we do like a couple weeks of canvassing and we have an event plan. So that Spades tournament happened after 3 weeks of canvassing in District 5, in Louisville Metro Council District 5. And so we want to knock on doors and inform people about the nonpartisan changes in elections this year. For the first time, Louisville mayoral and city council races are nonpartisan. So we want our elders, young voters who are just voting for the first time, everyone in between, to know you may not be able to just do down ballot voting for races. And also, independents can now vote in the primaries in a way that they couldn't before because of the closed primaries. So here's a little bit of education. And by the way, do you want to come hang with us? We're going to do a space tournament. In a few weeks in April, we're going to do an art activism event. And then after the election, we're going to host a picnic. So, we will never shy away from the fact that we know electoral organizing is important, but we also, even in that work, want to embed community building and care and joy. Because again, like I said, that is really what's going to give us the power to take any campaign all the way. And so, yeah, those spaces where we're not here for a strategy meeting and we're not here for a power mapping session, like, we're just here to be. So rather than separate that type of work, like, let's combine it and see what's possible then. What does voter turnout look like when you've invested that much like in one district, right? We're creating these third spaces in this place that we're going to be in for several months. We're excited to see what the outcomes of that different approach will be.
Very cool. Yeah.
For me, I'm gonna start with like on the political side, the CARE campaign. I am really, especially, and it goes up and down because running campaigns is very difficult. And I'm a little bit exhausted with it. But the last meeting that we had just really made me just like I am fired up. And so just a little bit about the campaign. I'm not going to go into too many details, but overall, what we're fighting for is listen, people need care. And what we mean by care is that people need mental health services. People need, you know what I'm saying, shopping centers in their neighborhood. People need jobs. People need better food options. People need fresh food. People need autonomy of their home, of their neighborhood. That is what people need. And when people have that, that is how crime is reduced. That is how poverty is then addressed, right? And instead of a system that addresses our punishment but does not address the circumstances in which made us create, have that crime, we are saying, listen, hey, pump the brakes on all of this punishment. Because as an abolitionist, I don't even believe in that fully, right? Sometimes the punishment ain't matching the crime, so I don't even fully believe in that. But what I am saying is that my folks are struggling with mental health because a situation happened in their lives that didn't go addressed for years and years and years and years and years and years, and now that has gone into addiction, or that has gone into a mental health thing that they didn't even know was carried through their granddaddy or grandfather or whatever. And that person is now punished because through their mental breakdown or through their addiction or through their just chaotic living because they're a Black person navigating this world, then they in jail, which is going to, then there's a whole story about that. So that has me fired up because I think that there is some public information that I am really excited to give to the folks, and I'm really excited to be in emotion and in anger and happiness and love and in all the things with the people. And I think that this campaign, more than it is about winning what we want, it's more so about making sure that our people know what's going on in their own backyard and make sure that they know that they have the ability to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's on the political side. And then on the C3 side with Black, it has to be GOLD. And so GOLD is grassroots organizing leadership development. It's a fellowship program. And it really came out of the harm that I experienced through another organizing space that I was a part of in 2020 and 2021. And as a result of being in that toxic space, I was like, listen, I want a space where people can learn. They can also be safe. It can also be effective. You know what I'm saying? But where is all of these people who was on the ground in 2020? And I'm not asking that as judgment. I'm asking that really as a reflection of people who have been involved in movement for a very long time, who have created or in some type of way created some type of organizing container for people, or who have just been moving around and navigating the city in general. I'm saying that in reflection of us to be like, what did we have set in place for all of those people who were on the ground? Why did we not have the containers to hold those people? Well, when you get into the depths of it, you realize people had conflict, people didn't have money, or things and resources were gate kept. It was just a lot going on. And so I'm like, how do I create a space where people who were on the ground for the very first time, who for the very first time felt important, who for the very first time felt like they had something worth or possible to contribute to the fight of Black people, how can we create a space where that can be, nourished and loved on and elevated and skilled and scaled up? So I created the GOLD program to do just that. And we started it in Louisville with the pilot, and then we went to Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and this year we are taking the program to Lexington, Kentucky. And then eventually it'll come back to Louisville, and we'll start doing some affinity spaces that look like it's always and forever going to be for Black people and Black people only. I have no straight up. But it will be for Black queer people, Black youth, Black previously incarcerated people, right? Because the leadership development that those different sets of identities need look different. And so what I'm really targeting with this program is people who are community champions or just people in the hood who already know what's going on the block. You already are an organizer. I want to bring people into that space to really help them understand the power that is already within them. You are already an organizer as a Black person. You had to organize. If you are here right now, it's because you organized yourself to be able to survive. How do I help you to understand how to use those skills that you use on a regular basis to a specific issue that is important to you in your community?
Wow, wow. So one thing I love how you all, even though both of you kind of was like care political, you really think of that care work as political work in a lot of ways. I also love how aligned you both are. I just think it makes the work of Black even more powerful when two folks are like so on the same page about building community power in the work. And also, hopefully, we have learned from 2020 as well, right? Hopefully, we have learned about decision making structures, not gatekeeping resources, and how to support organizers, basically who are everyday people coming into the fold, but who have bills to pay, who may have bad tags, no insurance. How do we care for folks who have all this energy, but who need community support? Because let's be honest, a lot of people from 2020, where are they? A lot of folks are burned out, still sleep, still picking up the pieces from putting so much energy into the movement, right? And we could probably do a whole episode on the nonprofit industrial complex and how all this money came flowing in, and then suddenly it's starting to dry up, right? So before we get to the last big, garden chat question we always ask, I want y'all to think of one thing, and especially Tyler, you mentioned survival, because in this moment, it feels like our very survival as human beings, as Black people, it very much feels like it's on the brink, right? And in your view, what do you think is the most important thing for our communities, and in particular Black communities? What do you think is the most important thing we have to do to protect ourselves?
So
You
for
can
me,
sit with for a second. Yeah, go ahead.
and I was trying to think which one, but I already know which one. For me, it is we have to be in space together. I just like we have to be around each other. And we have to create more spaces, more hangouts, more kickbacks, more, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, barbecues at grandma's house, drop the kids off. We need togetherness. We need to be around each other. I mean, it needs to be a little bit annoying. We need to have somewhere to go with the homies, with the family, with the friends on a regular basis. We got to share space. And I'm not we got to remove ourselves from the internet. I always talk about this. And I'm removed from the internet, but I will opt in when folks are ready. But that means we have to be relentless and ruthless in spending time and hanging out because we need each other so much because of that survival. We are so sad. Our kids are sad. Our kids are experiencing things. We're also very happy and having to isolate ourselves from other people and even enjoying that happiness. We need to be together. We need to hang out. We need to be all up in each other's business, all up in each other's space. Girl, girl, I done seen that happen 3 times, man. Come on now. What's going on? I'm sad for you, honey. It's looking like you not what's going on. We need to be eyes on each other. Whole space.
Mm. Amen. Amen. Celine, before you jump in on this one, I gotta say, because Tyler, you and I have had this conversation multiple times. I've even posted about things you said about opting out of the internet. But when we do, if we're opting out of these meta apps and this Instagram, what are we opting into? And I think it's like share space feels so simple, but it's so important, right? Because how do you know if someone's sad for real unless you're around them, like, and just that energy of, being in community. It can't happen online. Like it can't happen to that same level, you know. That's how you develop the love and the trust.
In
It's
the
cool to
great.
do a Zoom, and I love y'all. I love chatting over the internet, but it is not the same,
Yep.
right? So perfect. Yeah. So
Yeah, I think organizing has really led to a lot of personal transformations for me. I was introduced to you know, building a spiritual practice through organizing. And now I have something that I feel really rooted and anchored in, and that holds me down when like the rest of the world is all over the place, and allows me to show up in space either as my full self or at least aware of what's going on within me, so that I can, understand like, hey, y'all, not having a great day, but I wanted to be here. I'm just going to kind of chill out. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think being able to be with others also starts with you being able to be with yourself. And for organizing, I didn't realize how much I was on autopilot. Like, there were so many things I was doing in life without thought, without intention, often because I thought this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what people like me, my age, my gender, whatever the case may be, like, this is what we're quote unquote supposed to be doing. And until I was invited into opportunities to start questioning that, like, where does that come from? Why do I think I'm supposed to be doing this? Why do I think of myself as lazy because I took some time off of work? I'm not, doing what I was supposed to do. I'm not achieving whatever measures. Like, who does this achievement even come from? Why am I measuring myself in this way and thinking of myself in this way? And the same way I started with talking about like how the strategy of divide and conquer led to an entire genocide in my country. This system, this society has also divided us as people, like mind, body, spirit. We're completely disconnected. And organizing, I learned about somatics through organizing. And I started to recognize like, I am not at all connected to my body. I'm connected to my mind, because I've had this very much achievement mindset, because that's what I was taught: work hard, go to school, da da da. But and emotionally, I just happen to be a Pisces moon and Pisces sun and a Cancer moon, so I can't help it. But my body, I had no relationship to my body whatsoever. And it impacts so many things: my health, how I take care of myself, if I'm taking care of myself, and those types of things. And then when I'm showing up in space and my temper is bad or my patience is low, and that's affecting my relationships, you know what I mean? So I think I so agree with what Tala has said. And I would just add on too that like, there's so much, we need to create spaces and opportunities for people to be able to be in that deep reflection with themselves and to tap in and to reconnect mind, body, and spirit, because that is what allows us to show up not only for ourselves, but for others in our community as well. And it helps us have, again, an anchor. I literally just got an anchor tattoo, because the world is going to continue to spiral all around us. And what is going to help us get through those moments, So yeah, personal transformation and like personal work, I think, is more important now than ever before.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. This conversation is so rich and full, and it resonated so much. Take it from Auntie, like autopilot will catch up with you at a certain point. You're gonna autopilot yourself into a chronic illness, right? And I have experienced that myself. And even when you were talking about thinking about the time when I'm waking up at 5:30 in the morning to go to the gym. So that was something I did do for myself that was helpful. I started going to the gym when I was a youth defender, but being in court at 8:30 in the morning, being in the office even before that, so I could prep for a hearing, because I got a child facing a murder charge about to go to adult court, and that weight, that pressure, that stress for years trying to get kids home out of secure custody. It wasn't until after the fact. I mean, I found it. That's why I found it minding my garden, because it's like we have to mind our own gardens at some point. We have to. If we are not well, right? We showing up like you said, his face is angry. People wondering why I'm snapping. And I will say throughout my life that has been a trait of mine, of tragic flaw, host of it, until one day it'd be like the smallest thing and I'm snapping, because you ain't got a pen I can borrow, right? It's a minor. So I really appreciate this conversation. It's so beautiful and rich. And so now we have the last question, which every garden chat I always ask guests to plant seeds of wisdom with our listeners. It's whatever on your heart, spirit, mind. So what seeds do you want to plant today? And whoever wants to start can start. Yeah.
I would say find your people, like finding Black and Black Action Fund, like, I mean, like, even the folks who brought us in, Alicia Hurl, Asia Holston Barber, like the folks who have continued to hold us and continue to be there for us, connecting with Tala and like the relationship that we've built, our team, our members, our people who are, community, some people who have become friends, like relationships have truly developed. And I know that can be hard, right? People are often saying, just find your people, go touch grass, all the things. But we have built a container to make it hopefully a little bit more feasible. If you vibe with us, if you connect with us, like maybe we can be your people, right? Because we need each other. And so I think that's the seed that I would leave off with, is that we all need people. There's a show that I'm watching and somebody was dissecting it, and they were like, talking about uploaded intelligence. That's a whole nother thing. I'm a big sci-fi fan.
Mhm.
But, yeah, like being human, the experience of being human is about other people, is about our relationships to other people. And so, and we, we're social folks. So in order for us to really like thrive and be well, you have to find your people. And so that's what I would leave.
Yeah, Tala, before you say it makes me think of Ari Lennox. I started smiling when you were talking at the end of her song "New Apartment." She's,
Yes.
talking about this new apartment. Ain't nobody here. I can, I got over my fear of the dark, so now I turn the lights off. But at the end, she's like, and then I realized, oh my gosh, I need people. It's true. It is so true. So, Tala, what wisdom would you like to leave us with today?
Community is how we win. Yeah, I think that's what I want to leave us with. Like, community is how we win. When we share community with each other, when we barter and trade with each other, when we use one another for our beautiful talents and spirits and skills, when we share space together, community is how we win. That is the only way for me, is to be in community, to organize the community, to love on community, to provide resources for the community, to share with community, barter with community. Community is the way we win.
Beautiful. I think that's such a great way to wrap up. But before we depart, how can folks find Black AF? How can folks find y'all? Share ways people can find you and get plugged in. Because one thing I know about y'all work that we haven't talked about is that it's the idea that, or you pull on this theory that it takes 3% of the population to create a shift, right? And so you really have this target and goal. So how can people learn more about y'all work, find out about gold, and if the monthly meetings might be a good fit, right? So how can people find y'all?
Yeah, so because we're technically two different organizations, I'll share Black info, and then Black AF is very similar, but our website for Black is kyblack.org. And all of our social media for Black, I think our handles are KYBlack 2020. KY Black alone was taken. So, we got to add the 20. And so that social media, our organizational phone number is just one number, 502-641-9901. If folks want to reach out to us that way. For Black AF, it's very similar. Our website is kyblackaf.org. On social media, at kyblackaf on Instagram and Facebook. Black has a TikTok and all of those type of things. Same phone number. Yeah, I think those are the quickest ways to connect with us. And I don't know if I'm missing anything, Tala, if there's any other ways that I can.
I mean, you can have our emails, but it's our first names. Mine is not what it's written as. It's TALESHA at kyblack.org. But again, if you just go to our social media, it'll take you right to our direct emails, and then you can just email us that way. But yeah, and then just interact, be on social media, find us, talk to us. We ain't no different. One of the things I just want to leave us with is that the Black experience and the organizing experience are not separate. They are the same. We are all here. Nobody is better or worse or different from the other. We all have different sets of skills that are all important to this ecosystem.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank y'all for y'all time with me today, for sharing. I can't wait to share this out with listeners. Thank you for sharing your brilliance. I'm so glad y'all are co-creating and collaborating in Louisville. And so I really appreciate y'all. And we'll go on into part for today. Yay, her hands. Yay. Auntie, let's clock it though. That's my jam right there. Clock it. All right, take care. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.